In this video, I'm going to talk about how to pass the Multi-State Bar Exam, or the MBE, in 6 simple steps. These steps will provide you with an approach that will help you maximize your study time and allow your MBE score to improve significantly in a short amount of time. Before I talk about these steps, I want to mention a common mistake that we often see students make when they are studying for the MBE. Many students adopt the approach of answering 100 or more questions a day, which is not constructive or even doable much of the time. This is just too many questions to answer in one day. Some students will follow this approach day after day, yet never see their MBE score improve significantly. Although it is important to practice answering MBE questions, simply answering tons of questions is not the correct approach. Answering too many MBE questions sacrifices quality for quantity, which is not a successful approach. Instead, you will want to follow a solid approach that will allow you to see your MBE score improve over time. The first step is to make sure that you are using excellent outlines. If you have low-quality outlines that you are having trouble learning from, you are starting this process at a disadvantage. You need good, high-quality outlines that you can learn from and memorize. This is key. For example, your outlines should not be too short. A real property outline should not be just 5 pages, but it also should probably not be 200 pages. A good real property outline should be somewhere in between these two extremes. Your outlines need to have enough detail to cover the topics tested on the bar exam, but still be manageable. A mistake we see students make with outlines is having multiple outlines for each subject. Some students drive themselves crazy by acquiring, for example, 5 different real property outlines from 5 different sources. And then these students may cross-reference all these outlines and say to themselves, oh, this outline states the rule like this, but this one states the rule like that. The rules you find in different outlines may be stated slightly differently, but the law is the same. Also, topics in different outlines will be presented in different orders. You don't need multiple outlines. You just need one good outline. Once you find a good outline, stick to that outline. That is the outline you want to memorize and learn and become very comfortable with. If you don't like the outlines you currently have, order some outlines from a different company and see if those outlines work better for you. Because you're going to be depending on those outlines for learning and memorizing the law, it is important to have excellent outlines. The second step is to make sure you understand the law. Some students believe that it is enough just to have a general idea of how the law works in order to pass the bar exam. It is not enough for a couple of reasons. First, it is a lot harder to memorize the law if you don't understand it. Second, if you don't understand the law, even if you have it memorized, you are more likely to make mistakes when applying the law to a fact pattern on the MBE. Also, understanding the law will give you more confidence going into the exam. If I were to ask you, what is the difference between first and second-degree murder, how would you answer? What if I asked you to explain the Dormant Commerce Clause? What about the 11th Amendment? Or the difference between claim preclusion and issue preclusion? If you understand the law, you should be able to articulate these legal concepts with relative ease. If you cannot, that may be a sign that you don't understand the law in that area. Memorizing the law without understanding it is not going to be very helpful to you. Here are some ways you can gain an understanding of the law. A good place to start is by watching your bar exam prep course lectures. These lectures can shed a lot of light on complicated topics and build your understanding of the law. Another great way to gain an understanding of the law is to engage a private tutor. A tutor can break down the topics of law that you need individualized help with. Another way is to join a study group if you are a person that learns well in a group. You can also check with your law school to see if it offers any resources that can help you learn the law for the bar exam, including specific bar exam prep courses offered by the school. Many law schools have an academic success office, so that is a good place to contact first. And don't forget Google. Google can often be surprisingly helpful in providing information about challenging legal concepts. The reason for this is that if you don't understand a certain area of the law, probably a lot of other people don't either. After you understand the law, the third step is to memorize the law and set up a retention schedule. Failing to memorize the law is the most common mistake first-time bar exam takers make. Many bar exam takers make the mistake of saving memorization for the last 2 weeks of bar prep. Memorization should be part of your regular study schedule from the beginning. You will feel much less overwhelmed, and bar prep will be much more manageable if you memorize the law from the beginning. Memorization means that you have a detailed understanding of the rules of law. You should be able to, for example, state all 4 elements of a dying declaration, all elements of larceny and burglary, and all the elements of intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress. To do this, go through your outline, section by section, and memorize each section at a time of your outline. After you memorize each section of your outline, at some point, you should have your whole outline memorized. Once you get to that point, create a retention schedule that prompts you to keep going back and reviewing your outline over and over again. If you don't have a retention schedule in place, even if you memorize your outline during week 1, you are likely going to forget it by week 5. So be sure to schedule time to regularly review the outlines you have already memorized. Although reviewing your outlines can be time-consuming, it is one of the best ways to improve your MBE score. Students who are simply answering a lot of MBE questions but not memorizing their outlines will often continue to score low on their MBE questions, no matter how many questions they answer. But when those students take a few days off from answering questions and take that time to memorize the law, they almost always see a significant increase in their score. The fourth step is to study smart and focus on the highly tested MBE topics. Not all MBE topics are tested equally. Some MBE topics are tested more than others. The National Conference of Bar Examiners tells us what those highly tested MBE topics are. For example, 12 to 13 of the 175 scored MBE questions will be on negligence, criminal procedure, and individual rights. 8 to 9 of those questions will be on relevancy and reasons for excluding relevant evidence. 6 to 7 questions will be on hearsay. On the other hand, the rule against perpetuities will most likely show up just once on the MBE, 1 out of 175 scored questions. Because you know that you're going to have 12 or 13 negligence MBE questions and 1 rule against perpetuities MBE question, you want to spend a lot more time on negligence when studying for the MBE. Negligence is worth at least 12 times more points on the MBE than the rule against perpetuities. Students sometimes make the mistake of not spending enough time on negligence because they feel they know it, and instead spend a lot of time on a topic like the rule against perpetuities because it is a more complicated topic and students in general are less familiar with it. This does not mean that you should ignore any tested area, but be smart and study for the test rather than just studying generally. Your goal is to pass the MBE, so focus on the areas that the MBE tests most frequently. The fifth step is to practice real MBE questions in an untimed setting. This step has two components. First, use real MBE questions released from the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Many commercial bar prep companies do not offer NCBE-released MBE questions and instead have only MBE-style questions they have written themselves. If your commercial bar prep course does not offer NCBE-released MBE questions, there are a couple places you can find them, including JD Advising and Adaptabar. You can also purchase them directly from the National Conference of Bar Examiners website. And if you like books, there is a book called Strategies and Tactics for the MBE that contains NCBE-released MBE questions. The important thing is that you gain access to these questions. You don't need to purchase these questions from more than one source because they all contain the same questions. If your commercial course offers only questions that they have written, those questions are not necessarily poor quality questions. You can use those questions for practice, and they can be a good source of practice questions. Just make sure that you are using NCBE-released MBE questions as well, because those released questions are most similar to what you're going to see on exam day. Next, practice smart. The best way to approach MBE questions in the beginning is to answer questions slowly and methodically in an untimed setting and answer one question at a time. Take a question, read the fact pattern, then read the call of the question, but don't look at the answer choices yet. See if you can state the issue, state the rule, and figure out what the answer is, if possible, before even looking at the answer choices. Then, take a look at the answer choices and choose the answer choice that most closely fits the answer you came up with. Then, go through all the incorrect answer choices and explain why they are incorrect. Then, check the answer and read the explanation. You will find that this is a time-consuming process. You won't be using this approach to answering MBE questions on exam day because it will take too much time. But this slow, methodical approach is a great way to improve your MBE score because it requires you to dissect the question and use what you have learned about the law. If you answer an MBE question incorrectly, or if you answer it correctly but for the wrong reason, it is important to write it down. We call this the legal pad method. Here's how it works. If you answer an MBE question incorrectly, take out a legal pad or other document that you use for this specific purpose, such as a Word or a Google Doc, and write down why you answered the question incorrectly. For example, if the question was testing dying declaration and you forgot one of the elements, or you remembered an element incorrectly, write down the correct elements so that you can review them. Do this for all MBE questions that you answer incorrectly or those that you answer correctly for incorrect reasons. Then regularly review this document to help you learn the topics you missed on MBE questions in the past. If you don't follow this method and say, miss a question on dying declaration, you might think, oh, okay, I got that one wrong. But if you don't do anything to help you remember the elements of dying declaration, the next time you encounter a question on dying declaration, you may miss that question as well, or you might even miss the same question again. There is so much information you are trying to remember as you are preparing for the bar exam that you are not going to be able to remember every little thing, even if it makes sense at the time. By using the legal pad method and writing down what went wrong with the question and reviewing that document regularly, you can turn your areas of weakness into areas of strength. Other things you might want to write on this document are whether you misread the question, whether you read the question too fast, maybe you got the facts confused, or thought the answer choice that made the most sense was too easy and determined that it could not be the correct answer. This exercise will help you to see problematic patterns in your question answering so that you can address them and fix them. For example, if you find that you have written on your document, "read question too fast" 3 times, this can help you stop and assess what you are doing. You don't want to keep missing MBE questions just because you are reading them too fast. The legal pad method can help you stop making mistakes before they get out of control. I mentioned using a legal pad for this document or a Word or Google Doc. Although most of us do the majority of our documentation these days on a computer, there are studies that show that handwriting information can make it easier to remember the information. So, if you are a person who likes to handwrite information, or you can go either way with handwriting or typing information, we recommend that you try handwriting the information. However, if you are a person who always types, maybe your handwriting is illegible, like mine, typing this information is fine. The 6th step is to get ready for test day by completing timed exams and coming up with a Scantron strategy. We recommend that about 6 weeks before the bar exam, you start incorporating timed exams into your practice. For example, first, do 33 MBE questions in an hour, assuming that you will be taking the exam under standard testing conditions. If you have timing accommodations, you will need to adjust your practice time for those accommodations. After you have done 33 MBE questions in an hour, twice, next do 66 MBE questions in 2 hours. After a couple of weeks of that, continue to increase the number of questions and the time so that you are completing 100 questions in 3 hours. Completing timed exams in this way will help you maximize your chances of feeling comfortable with the MBE and not running out of time on exam day. Additionally, we recommend that you come up with a Scantron strategy for marking your answers on exam day. For example, if you don't know the answer to a question, instead of spending 5 minutes on one single question, give the question your best shot, give it an answer, but put a light dot by the question to remind yourself to come back to the question at the end if you have time. This will help you stay on track and avoid a situation in which you have 10 or 20 unanswered MBE questions and no time left. The key is not to spend too much time on any single question.